Anderson de Silva is a Brazilian mixed martial artist and boxer. He is a former UFC Middleweight Champion and holds the record for the longest title reign in UFC history at 2,457 days. This started in 2006 and ended in 2013 and included a UFC record 16 consecutive victories in that span. UFC President Dana White, UFC commentator Joe Rogan, and numerous mixed martial arts pundits have named Silva as one of the greatest mixed martial artists of all time. Silva left the UFC in November 2020 and returned to boxing. Silva was born on April 14, 1975, in São Paulo, Brazil. The son of a poverty-stricken family, he spent the majority of his childhood in Curitiba with his aunt and uncle, who was an officer with the Curitiba police force. Silva's first foray in martial arts began as a child training jiu-jitsu with neighborhood kids. As a teen, Silva began training in taekwondo, capoeira, and muay thai. Silva initially fought in Brazil in the welterweight category. Silva made his professional debut in 1997 with a pair of wins. Silva recorded his first loss in 2000 to Luiz Azarito by decision. After that fight, he went on a 9-fight winning streak, winning 6 of those fights by either submission or TKO. After winning his first match in Japan, he was put up against Judo champion Hayato Sakurai on August 26, 2001. Silva beat Sakurai by unanimous decision after 3 rounds and became the new Judo Middleweight Champion and the first man to defeat Sakurai, who was undefeated in his first 20 fights. In 2002, Silva was scheduled to fight then-current UFC welterweight champion and future UFC Hall of Famer Matt Hughes at UFC 36. However, Silva instead signed a contract and began fighting for Pride Fighting Championships. In his first fight with the promotion, he stopped Alex Stiebling with a cut resulting from a high kick. In his next match, he won via decision against the Diet Butcher Alexander Otsika. At Pride 25, Silva faced former UFC welterweight champion Carlos Newton. Newton tried to shoot in on Silva, but was hit with a flying knee. Newton collapsed and Silva finished the fight with strikes, winning by technical knockout. At Pride 26, Silva faced Daiju Takes. Takes, with a record of 4 wins and 7 losses, was the underdog. However, Silva was dominated on the ground for almost the entire fight before being submitted by Takes when caught in a triangle choke late in the first round. After his loss to Takes, Silva became demotivated and thought about quitting MMA, but was convinced to keep on fighting by Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira. Silva then left Shootbox, joined Nogueira in Brazilian Top Team and started to fight in other promotions around the world. On June 27, 2004, Silva fought Jeremy Horn and earned a decision victory. 3 months later, Silva made his debut in the Cage Rage promotion in England. At Cage Rage 8, Silva fought and defeated noted striker Lee Murray by decision. That year, Silva returned to Pride FC on December 31st to face Rio Chonan. Silva was in control with a takedown and body triangle in the first round. Chonan was able to counter Silva's knees from the clinch, with knees and takedowns. Chonan was perceived by some to be winning up until the finish. During the third round, Bas Rutten, commentating alongside Mauro Ranallo, stated that he believed Anderson must obtain a knockout or strong finish or he would lose the fight. Despite being the underdog, Chonan ended the fight in the third round with a rare flying scissor heel hook, forcing Silva to submit. After the loss to Chonan, he was cut by Pride. Silva continued fighting in the Cage Rage promotion, as well as other promotions around the world. Silva defended his Cage Rage title against Curtis Stout. Although he was slated to fight Matt Lindland at Cage Rage 16, Lindland's decision to fight Mike Van Arsdale at Ray's Fight Night put an end to the highly anticipated matchup. Instead, Silva defended his championship against Tony Freiklund, winning the fight with a reverse elbow, knocking out Freiklund early in the first round. Silva competed in Hawaii's Rumble on the Rock promotion, where he fought Yushin Okami in the first round of the 175 pounds tournament. Though labeled as a favorite to win the tournament, Silva was eliminated from the tournament when he kicked Okami in the face from the guard position. Okami's knees were on the ground at the time, making the attack an illegal strike to the head of a downed opponent. Although speculation ran rampant about where Silva would sign next, the UFC announced in late April 2006 that they had signed him to a multi-fight contract. It was not long before the UFC started promoting Silva, releasing an interview segment almost immediately after announcing his arrival. Silva made his debut at Ultimate Fight Night 5 on June 28, 2006. His opponent was the Ultimate Fighter 1 contestant Chris Laban, who had gone undefeated in the UFC with 5 consecutive victories. Laban, confident of victory, had predicted he would KO Silva in a pre-fight interview. A relatively unknown fighter in the United States, Silva made an emphatic debut when he knocked out Laban with a flurry of pinpoint strikes, followed by a final knee strike at 49 seconds into the first round. Silva's striking accuracy was 85%. In response to the victory, the UFC tallied a poll on their main page, asking viewers to select Silva's next opponent. The majority of voters selected the UFC Middleweight Champion Rich Franklin. Silva fought Franklin at UFC 64 on October 14, 2006, and defeated him by TKO at 2:59 in the first round. Silva hit Franklin with knees to the body from the Muay Thai clinch, then badly broke Franklin's nose with a knee to the face. Unable to strike back, Franklin dodged the last of Silva's strikes before falling to the ground, where referee Big John McCarthy ended the fight. Silva was crowned the new UFC Middleweight Champion, becoming the second man to defeat Franklin, after Black House teammate Lyoto Machida. On February 3, 2007, UFC 67, Silva was scheduled to fight the Ultimate Fighter 4 winner Travis Lutter in what would be his first title defense since defeating Rich Franklin in October 2006. However, Lutter failed to make the 185 pounds weight limit and the match was changed to a non-title bout. Many felt that Lutter's best chance to win was to take the fight to the ground, with Lutter being an accomplished jiu-jitsu black belt. Silva won via submission with a combination of a triangle choke and elbow strikes in the second round. In his next fight at UFC 73 on July 7, 2007, Silva successfully defended his title against Nate Marquardt, winning by TKO at 4:50 in the first round. 3 months later, on October 20, 2007, at UFC 77, Silva fought a title defense rematch against Rich Franklin in Franklin's hometown of Cincinnati, Ohio, at the US Bank Arena. Silva defended his belt by defeating Franklin via TKO in the second round. On March 1, 2008, at UFC 82, Silva fought Pride middleweight champion Dan Henderson in a title unification bout. Henderson was believed to have the edge on the ground, having competed in the 1992 and 1996 Summer Olympics in Greco-Roman wrestling. Silva defended his title by defeating Henderson via rear naked choke in the second round. At UFC Fight Night 14 on July 19, 2008, Silva made his debut at light heavyweight in a bout against James Irvin. Silva won via KO due to strikes in 1-0 of the first round after catching Irvin's attempted leg kick with his left arm and delivering a straight right that dropped Irvin to the mat. Silva then finished a prone Irvin with a blitz of punches to the head. Irvin later tested positive for methadone and oxymorphone. Silva's next fight was on October 25, 2008, at UFC 90 in Rosemont, Illinois. Silva defended his middleweight title against Patrick Cote. In the third round, Cote landed awkwardly on his right leg while throwing a kick and fell to the mat grasping his right knee in pain. Referee Herb Dean declared the fight over when Cote could not continue, ruling the bout a TKO victory for Silva. Cote, however, became the first of Silva's UFC opponents to make it past the second round. After his fight with Cote, Silva was criticized for seemingly avoiding contact during the bout. On April 18, 2009, at UFC 97 in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, Silva defeated Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt Thales Leites by unanimous decision and recorded his UFC record 9th consecutive win in the octagon. Leites is credited with being the first man in UFC history to take Silva through 5 rounds to a judge's decision. The crowd repeatedly booed his lackluster performance, bored expression, and frustrated attempts to goad his opponent into fighting, and in the 4th and 5th rounds took to dancing, lowering his guard and slapping his opponent without retaliation. At UFC 101, which took place on August 8, 2009, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Silva again fought at 205 pounds against former UFC light heavyweight champion Forrest Griffin. Griffin was knocked down 3 times in the first round. The bout earned Silva Beatdown of the Year honors from Sherdog. The bout shared those honors with the second bout between Brock Lesnar and Frank Mir. Both fighters were awarded $60,000 as Fight of the Night bonuses, and Silva received $60,000 in bonus money for Knockout of the Night. After defeating Griffin, a Yahoo Sports reporter allegedly claimed that Silva's manager Ed Soares had confirmed that Silva would abandon his middleweight belt to fight at light heavyweight. However, Soares and a UFC spokesperson confirmed that a conversation agreeing Silva would permanently move up to light heavyweight never took place. Silva did not relinquish his title to fight exclusively at light heavyweight. Soares stated his attorney plans to speak to Yahoo Sports about the matter. Silva was expected to defend the UFC Middleweight Championship against Vitor Belfort on January 2, 2010, at UFC 108. However, Ed Soares announced that the bout would not take place as Silva would not be fully recovered from surgery. Silva was then set to face Belfort on February 6, 2010, at UFC 109. The fight, however, was dependent on Silva's healing, which he described as not going as planned. The fight was canceled because of Silva's slow recovery. Silva was once again scheduled to face Belfort on April 10, 2010, at UFC 112. The fight was later canceled again due to an injury to Belfort. Demian Maia was selected to fill the spot and take on Silva for the belt. In the first 2 rounds fighting Maia, Silva appeared to mock his opponent while employing quick, precise striking. In the 3rd round, however, Silva's tempo seemed to change. He looked to Maia to be the aggressor while he largely circled and taunted his opponent. In the 5th round, Silva's lack of action prompted referee Dan Miragliata to warn Silva for his conduct. The crowd began to side with Maia, who was the only fighter attempting to engage. After 5 rounds, Silva was declared the winner via unanimous decision. Silva was widely criticized for his performance. Dana White said it was the most embarrassed he had ever been since becoming UFC president. Midway through the 4th round, White walked away from the fight and gave the championship belt to Silva's manager, Ed Soares. White was so annoyed that he declined to personally place the belt around Silva's waist, claiming it was the first time he had done so after a title match. In the immediate post-fight interview, Silva apologized and said that he wasn't himself and that he would need to go back and reevaluate the humility that got him to where he is. In the post-fight interview, Silva made multiple references about how Demian insulted him before the bout. However, the pre-fight banter was seen by many as not out of the ordinary. On August 7, 2010, Silva faced Chael Sonnen for the UFC middleweight title at UFC 117. In the first round, Sonnen stunned Silva with a punch before taking him down and dominating from the top position, landing multiple blows. The following 3 rounds played out in a similar fashion, going to the ground early with Sonnen dominating from inside Silva's guard. In the 5th round, Silva slipped after being tagged by Sonnen's left hook, and the challenger took advantage by once again establishing a top position and delivering strikes to Silva. With about 2 minutes left in the round, Silva was able to lock up a triangle armbar on Sonnen, forcing Sonnen to submit at 3:10 of round 5. In the fight, Sonnen had struck Silva more times than Silva had been hit thus far in his entire UFC career. According to CompuStrike, in his first 11 UFC fights, Silva had been hit 208 times. On August 7, Sonnen had landed a total of 289 strikes. After the bout, it was revealed that Sonnen would have won a judge's decision. All 3 judges had Sonnen marked as the winner of all 4 rounds. Judges Nelson Hamilton and Dan Steld had Sonnen taking round 1 10-8, as well as Hamilton awarding the challenger another 10-8 total in round 3. Silva later claimed to have gone into the fight with a cracked rib and that a doctor advised him not to fight. Dana White announced that Sonnen would get a rematch upon Silva's return. Following the fight, the California State Athletic Commission confirmed that Chael Sonnen tested positive for synthetic testosterone, with his test having revealed a high testosterone to epitestosterone ratio, indicative of testosterone replacement therapy. The promised rematch was revoked after the issue with his testosterone ratio came to light. However, after Sonnen came back and won 2 straight fights, Dana White scheduled the rematch. Silva faced Vitor Belfort on February 5, 2011, at UFC 126. Belfort was expected to face Yushin Okami on November 13, 2010, at UFC 122, but was replaced by Nate Marquardt. After a feeling-out period of about 2.5 minutes in the first round, Silva and Belfort started to trade strikes. Silva landed a front kick to Belfort's jaw and followed up with punches to the grounded challenger. Referee Mario Yamasaki stopped the fight at 3:25 into the first round. With the win, Silva handed Belfort his first KO loss in 28 career fights and extended his record streak of title defenses to 8. Silva then faced Yushin Okami on August 27, 2011, at UFC 134. He defeated the Japanese middleweight by TKO at 2:04 of round 2, displaying skilled head movement and accurate striking. His record then went to 31-4, avenging his DQ loss to Okami back in 2006. A rematch with Chael Sonnen was to take place on June 23, 2012, at UFC 147, but the bout was moved back to July 7, 2012. At UFC 148, while the expected co-feature of the Brazilian event, a rematch between Vitor Belfort and Wanderlei Silva, would headline the event. The change was due to a scheduling conflict with the UN Conference Rio Plus 20, which occurred during the same time frame as UFC 147. At UFC 148, after again being dominated throughout the first round, Silva stopped Sonnen in the second with a TKO. He became the first to stop Stephan Bonner via strikes in the first round of a light heavyweight bout on October 13, 2012, at UFC 153. On October 29, 2014, it was announced that Silva would coach opposite Mauricio Rua for The Ultimate Fighter Brazil 4, which began filming in early 2015. Despite being coaches on the show, the two fighters will not face each other at the end of the season. Silva's continued participation was briefly in doubt during the filming after the announcement of his failed drug test. Initially, Dana White announced that Silva would remain on the show as a coach. Subsequently, Silva was pulled as one of the coaches and was replaced by Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira. In his first fight post-injury, Silva faced Nick Diaz in the main event of UFC 183 on January 31, 2015. He won the fight via unanimous decision. In the days after the fight, it was revealed that Silva tested positive for drostanolone and androstane, 2 anabolic steroids, and pre-fight drug screening on January 9, 2015. Nevada State Athletic Commission Chairman Francisco Aguilar confirmed that the fight has not yet been overturned and can't be until a motion is passed by a majority of the commission. Any penalties, suspensions, or changes to the outcome of the fight have to be presented as a motion and then voted on by the commission to enact the order. On February 11, 2015, it was reported that Silva tested positive for an additional unknown illegal substance in a separate test that was related to UFC 183. On February 17, 2015, NSAC Executive Director Bob Bennett confirmed to ESPN.com that Silva failed his post-fight urine test and that Silva had tested positive for the steroid drostanolone, the same banned substance he tested positive for during an out-of-competition test taken on January 9, 2015. Silva also tested positive for the anti-anxiety medication oxazepam and temazepam, which is used to treat sleep deprivation. On August 13, after several reschedules, the disciplinary hearing was held to decide on the subject. Silva's defense argued that a tainted sexual enhancement drug that a friend had given to Silva after a trip to Thailand was the root of the two failed tests for drostanolone, and also appealed to mistakes in the NSAC testing procedures, pointing to a pair of drug tests, one on January 19 and one after the fight, which Silva passed. He admitted to using both benzodiazepines the night prior to the fight as therapy to control stress and help him sleep. Silva's team was unable to explain the presence of androsterone in January 9th test. The commission rejected the defense and suspended him for 1 year retroactive to the date of the fight, as the current guidelines were not in effect at the time of the failed tests. He was also fined his full win bonus, as well as 30% of his show money, totaling $380,000. His victory was overturned to a no contest. In his first fight after his PED suspension was lifted, Silva faced Michael Bisping on February 27, 2016, at UFC Fight Night 84. He lost the fight via unanimous decision. However, the fight was not without controversy, as at the end of round 3 Silva dropped Bisping with a flying knee while Bisping was signaling to referee Herb Dean that he lost his mouthpiece. Silva believed he had won the bout and continued to celebrate as referee Herb Dean said the fight was not over and it continued for another 2 rounds to the decision. Both participants were awarded Fight of the Night honors. Silva was expected to face Uriah Hall on May 14, 2016, at UFC 198. However, Silva pulled out of the bout on May 10 after requiring a surgery to remove his gallbladder. As a result, Hall did not compete at the event. Silva was a short-notice replacement to face current UFC light heavyweight champion Daniel Cormier in a non-title bout on July 9, 2016, at UFC 200. Silva lost the fight via unanimous decision. Silva faced Derek Brunson on February 11, 2017, at UFC 208. He was awarded a unanimous decision victory. 19 of 23 media outlets scored the bout in favor of Brunson. Silva was expected to face Kelvin Gastelum on June 3, 2017, at UFC 212. However, Gastelum was pulled from the matchup after testing positive for marijuana. In turn, despite having 2 months to secure an opponent, Silva and promotion officials confirmed on May 11 that he would not compete at that event. The bout with Gastelum was rescheduled and was expected to take place on November 25, 2017, at UFC Fight Night 122. However, it was announced on November 10, 2017 that Silva would be pulled from the bout due to failing USADA drug test on October 26. In July 2018, USADA announced that Silva had been exonerated from the failed test after finding contaminated supplements and received a 1-year suspension from USADA dating back to November 2017 and would be free to resume fighting in November 2018. Silva returned and faced Israel Adesanya on February 10, 2019, at UFC 234. He lost the fight via unanimous decision. This fight earned him the Fight of the Night award. Silva faced Jared Cannonier on May 11, 2019 at UFC 237. He lost the fight via TKO in the first round after a kick from Cannonier to Silva's right leg injured him and rendered him unable to continue. Silva faced Uriah Hall on October 31, 2020 at UFC Fight Night, Hall vs. Silva. He lost the fight via technical knockout in round 4. In an Instagram post made after the fight, Silva hinted that his career in MMA was finished, though he did not officially announce retirement from the sport. On November 19, 2020, the UFC announced that they had released Silva from his UFC contract, which would allow him to negotiate with other promotions.